Hi, I'm Lisa Colon DeLay with the final in a series of 7 on David Bentley Hart's book called The Experience of God, Being, Consciousness, Bliss. Because the book can be hard to digest and some of the concepts can be said in sort of confounding ways, I wanted to make this series to make this important topic of ourselves and our being really accessible for the most people as possible. We've traveled through Hart's entire argument at this point. Being, consciousness, bliss, one reality with 3 windows, the great traditions converging on the same recognition, though sometimes using different language, and yourself as a participant in the infinite. Now the question that matters most, this is what we come to at the end. What does this mean for how you actually live? What does it mean day to day? Start with this recognition. You are not self-sufficient. Your existence is not your own achievement. It's a gift. Moment by moment, you're being sustained by something infinite. You don't have to justify your existence. You don't have to excuse it. You don't have to be ashamed of it. You don't have to earn the right to be. This is a liberation from a particular kind of terror. The terror of groundlessness, the sense that your existence is meaningless, nihilistic, that you have to construct meaning through some kind of thing you do yourself, like an achievement or some accumulation or what other people think of you or status of some kind. You don't. Your existence is already meaningful because it is an expression of the infinite. If you're not self-sufficient, if you're sustained by infinite being, then you're not fully separate from anyone else either. The other person is also sustained by that same infinite source. The suffering person, the stranger, the enemy, the frenemy, we're all connected. Hart argues that this naturally produces compassion, or at least it should. If given some time, we will be more compassionate to others we know we are interconnected with. Most of us live with a subtle background kind of anxiety that bubbles up from time to time. It's a feeling that if we're not really vigilant, if we don't control everything somehow, that things will sort of fall apart. We try to secure ourselves through acquisition or through accomplishments or through the gathering of power. This anxious grasping is just so exhausting. Hart says it becomes unnecessary when you recognize that you are not fully in control anyway. The universe doesn't depend on your vigilance. Your life doesn't depend on your securing it. This doesn't mean passivity, of course. You still act, you still choose, you work, you care, you strive, but you act from a different place, a more settled one. Not from fear, not from the desperate attempt to secure yourself and to justify your existence, but from a participation in something that is already whole and intact. You care for the people you love. Not to prevent loss, but as an expression of your recognition that you're all participants in the same infinite reality. You work, but not to prove your worth. Instead, it's a way of actualizing your gifts in service to what sustains you. You pursue justice, not because you need to convince yourself that you're a good person, but because injustice violates the fundamental recognition that all beings are equally expressions of the infinite. And then there's a question of suffering. Hart has written extensively about this. The fact that suffering exists, this troubles so many people, that innocent people suffer and that evil is real. None of this goes away in his theology, in his views. But something shifts when you recognize that you're not separate, that your deepest nature participates in infinite consciousness. Suffering becomes comprehensible in a different sort of way. Hart is not saying suffering is good, but he is saying it becomes more bearable because you know you're not alone in it. Infinite consciousness knows your suffering from inside it, so to speak, from within it. The infinite is not distant from suffering, and God is not far away. God participates in our suffering and in the suffering of the world. It is all participatory. And you know that your suffering doesn't define you and nail you down. You are also consciousness. You are also infinite participation. The suffering is real and it's temporary. What you are. Even though this doesn't eliminate grief and pain, it places them both in a larger context. As we discussed earlier, how our deepest longings can't be classified by finite things and how they point toward infinity, we also know that most of us spend our lives chasing finite satisfactions. Maybe it's a better body or more money or higher pay or a better role. Maybe it's the perfect relationship. These aren't evil things to chase after, but they can't satisfy the hunger that's pointing toward infinity. Hart suggests that we stop trying to satisfy the infinite hunger with the finite things. Instead, orient ourselves directly towards what you are really longing for. You can do this in prayer, in meditation, in contemplation, and we turn toward the infinite directly. We do not escape the world, but in the recognition that the infinite is not separate from the world, every beauty in the world is a reflection of that infinite beauty, including you. Every act of love participates in the infinite love. When you taste good food, you are actually participating in divine delight. When you experience beauty in nature, this is a recognition of the infinite also. When you love someone, you are being drawn toward the infinite through the vehicle of that love. The world becomes transparent to what it is expressing in the infinite. It reorients us to our understanding of purpose. We're taught, what do I want to achieve? What mark do I want to leave on this world? What will make my life really matter? But David Bentley Hart suggests having a different question. How can I become a clearer expression of what I already know that I am? You are already being, consciousness, and bliss. You are localized and limited, but participating in the infinite. The question isn't how to become something that you're not, or something more than you are. The question is how to become more fully what you already are. How do we live more consciously, more truthfully, more in harmony with our own nature and with others? And this is what the contemplative traditions call enlightenment or salvation. Not escaping the world, but waking up to what is already true. This series isn't about intellectual agreement. You can follow every argument and still live as if none of it matters, and that's fine. Intellectual assent changes nothing. But if something in these videos resonates with you somehow, if something lands with you as true or as helpful, then follow that. Not as a belief, but as attention and awareness and focus toward that. Pay attention and look at your existence. Really look at the fact that things are. Notice your consciousness, the awareness that is happening right now. Notice what draws you in, what calls to you, what you genuinely love, and your passions. What are those? David Bentley Hart's argument is that this recognition is available to anyone, not only the religious, not only the spiritual gurus and specialists, but to anyone willing to pay attention to what is already evident. The infinite expressing itself as being, as consciousness, and as the capacity to love and recognize goodness. Thank you for coming with me on this 7-part series. I hope you've hung on. And if you've missed one, go back and check out the whole series for itself. If something moved you or awakened you to go deeper, there are whole traditions that are waiting for you to explore. Hart's book, The Contemplative Practices, The community of seekers across all the great religious and faith paths are there. We're not in this alone. We're part of something vast and infinite.